Hello everyone. Today we are decoding classic literature through critical lenses. We'll explore Virginia Woolf's short story, A Society, through post-structuralist and feminist theory. Let's begin with a bit of theory. Post-structuralism questions the idea that language or literature can ever have one fixed meaning. It teaches us that meaning is unstable, always shifting, and shaped by power, discourse, and context. Post-structuralist thinkers like Derrida and Foucault argue that what we take to be truth is often a product of dominant ideologies, and that we must always ask who gets to define meaning and who is excluded from it. Feminist theory, particularly in its post-structuralist form, takes this further by showing how gender itself is not fixed or natural, but constructed through language, education, and social roles. It asks, how do texts reinforce or challenge the binary of male-female, strong-weak, rational, emotional? And crucially, how can we read texts in ways that resist patriarchal norms? In A Society, a group of upper-class British women form a secret intellectual club to investigate whether men, who've historically controlled education, war, and literature, have used their power wisely. Their method? They immerse themselves in male-authored texts, institutions, and experiences to see whether the male legacy is worth continuing. From a feminist and post-structuralist perspective, this is a radical move. These women begin to destabilize the dominant discourse that positions men as natural leaders and women as silent supporters. When they read the great books written by men, they don't just accept them, they critique their violence, mediocrity, and absurdity. One character says, "The great books are all written by men. But are they any good?" That single line deconstructs the very foundation of the literary canon. Post-structuralism helps us see that the greatness of these works is not objective truth. It's a constructed value, upheld by institutions of power that exclude women and others. The story also performs a gender role analysis. These women take on traditionally male roles, reading philosophy, criticizing academia, questioning war. Yet, their efforts are constantly dismissed, like when Professor Hobkin ignores their questions about literature and meaning. Their experience mirrors what happens to women in real-life academic and intellectual spaces. Exclusion masked as benevolent indifference. This links directly to Woolf's own life. In her early years, Woolf famously dressed as a man, once even disguising herself as an Abyssinian prince, alongside her brother Adrian in the Dreadnought hoax. This performance of gender shows how Woolf understood gender as a kind of costume, something that could be put on, exaggerated, and critiqued. Woolf herself was denied access to formal education, while her brothers went to university. Her writing career was her way of reclaiming intellectual space, often by highlighting the artificial boundaries that kept women out. If we bring in historicism and cultural studies, there's a key moment in the story where Ireland and the British colonies are mentioned. One woman says she doesn't want to have a child because she doesn't want to raise a son to be a soldier to be blown to pieces in Ireland. This is not just a personal statement, it's a historical critique. Woolf wrote this story in the early 1920s. At the time, Britain had just fought World War I and was dealing with Irish resistance and unrest in its colonies. The women in the story aren't only questioning patriarchy, they're questioning empire itself. Who builds these systems of war, conquest, and exploitation? And how are women complicit in them through silence or motherhood? Post-structuralism tells us to look at the cracks in dominant ideologies, and here, Woolf uses fiction to question British nationalism, colonial violence, and the romanticization of male heroism. The refusal to raise a soldier son is both a feminist and anti-imperial gesture. To wrap up, A Society is more than a satire. It's a philosophical provocation. Feminist theory reveals how Woolf exposes the exclusion of women from cultural production. Post-structuralism shows us how the very foundations of literary authority are fragile, built on shifting ideologies. And historicism helps us see that behind the humour lies a serious critique of British war, empire, and gender norms. Woolf was asking, over a century ago, if the stories we've inherited are built on violence and exclusion, why should we preserve them? And what stories will we tell instead? Thanks for watching.